talk to us about what these polls tell us? Where are the surges for both the Democrats and the Republicans coming from?
Well, I think on the Democratic side, it's hard to talk about it so much as a Bernie Sanders surge, although he's doubled his support since May. But there's really a sort of a falling down on the Hillary Clinton side. She has lost 30% of her support since May. This is the first time we've had a poll in Iowa showing her with less than 50% of the vote. So this has become a contest for real. I think the era of inevitability that people used to talk about, I don't think we can say that that still exists. On the Republican side, you see a slow and steady Ben Carson, who's been in the state since last year, coming up very gradually. But we also see a surge, definitely, from Donald Trump. When we last polled him in May, we had, I think he got 4% of the vote. He now leads the field at 23%.
So, Phil, what explains that? I mean, I hear what Ann is saying about the poll, but why have Scott Walker and Marco Rubio and Jeb Bush and all these names that we were talking about 6 months ago as the likely front runners? What happened? How did they fall behind so quickly?
Betty, every name you just mentioned played a role in kind of creating the deepest bench that Republican consultants and analysts had ever really seen, and they were thrilled by that fact. You had people with real records, with real experience, both at the state level and at the national level. One number I think really stuck out from Ann's surveys and polling, and that was of Republicans surveyed, 91% were either deeply unsatisfied or, quote, mad as hell at their current elected officials. And so you have this kind of anti-incumbent mood that's going, and I think there's a lot of times where people just aren't happy with what's going on in Washington. But this is deep, and I think it's really kind of driving things on the Republican side. If you look at what Donald Trump represents or you look at what Ben Carson represents, it's the exact opposite of what this, quote, unquote, deep bench of Republican candidates is bringing to the table. And at least in Iowa right now, that's what's resonating, Betty.
And is this so much about Donald Trump's message resonating, or is it because we in the media keep talking about him and he's dominating the news cycle?
Well, it's certainly part is the latter, where it's very hard for the rest of those candidates to make much noise that gets noticed. Scott Walker's, he led the last time we polled. That lead was cut in half. He's not polling very well. His favorability is still high. The favorability for Jeb Bush, however, is getting worse. So for those people there's sort of people who are holding their own in terms of people liking them here in Iowa, but there are people who are declining because Donald Trump and Ben Carson are eating up the vote for first place. It's kind of almost an embarrassment of riches on the Republican side that has ended up putting them in a situation where voters who want that experience have no place to coalesce, no one candidate to say, this is our best choice.
Well, clearly more exposure to these candidates is going to, is likely going to change people's minds about these candidates on the GOP side and also on the Democratic side. And that was something that Bernie Sanders alluded to when he was on CNN yesterday. And let's just play part of what he said about the upcoming debates.
I think rigging is a strong word. I think that at a time when so many of our people have given up on the political process, when 80% of young people did not vote in the last election, 63% of all Americans did not vote, I think debates are a good thing.
So who could really, who has the most at stake here in upcoming debates? Phil?
Well, I think, look, what Bernie Sanders is referring to is something that's really started to catch some steam on the Democratic side, and that's the limit to the number of debates. As of now, the Democratic National Committee has set up 6 debates. They said they're not going to do any more than that. Martin O'Malley, the former governor of Maryland, has really spoken out, attacked the DNC at a DNC convention last week about this issue. Bernie Sanders has gotten on board as well. And look, if you're behind, you want the debate. You want to sit there and have your opportunities to take shots at the front runner. If you're Hillary Clinton, 6 is probably fine. Her campaign has said that they're not going to advocate for any more. They're perfectly content with that. But, Betty, I think what you're hearing from Bernie Sanders and what you're hearing from Martin O'Malley and other Democratic candidates is, look, the Republicans are going to have double-digit debates. We should have that as well. The fewer debates, the less or limited opportunity they have to really come at Hillary Clinton, aside from, as you noted, just being on the ground in Iowa or New Hampshire or South Carolina.
And we would be remiss if we did not mention Vice President Biden. Is there a Biden factor on the Democratic side?
I would say there's a small one at this point, and given that he's not announced what his intentions are, that's not terribly surprising. We included him in the horse race question, and he got 14%, which I have to say is better than he's done the 2 other times that he's run in Iowa. So in a way, that's good news for the vice president. His favorabilities are very high. They are up there even beyond a little bit beyond Hillary Clinton. So there is a storehouse of goodwill. What we know is that he's not hurting Hillary Clinton more than he's hurting Bernie Sanders were he in the race. When we reallocate his votes and say, okay, pretend Biden wasn't in the race, he draws about evenly from both of those candidates. So it's sort of as a tepid, warm welcome.